Apparently, he forgot the child was in the car seat in the back of the automobile and went to work, left work sometime around 4:15, only to discover the child or the infant, the 22-month-old, in the back seat.
A father spends one more night in jail accused of murder in the death of his son that he says was an accident.
His answers and his responses when it first happened weren't consistent. They didn't make sense. They didn't add up. So they think there's more to this. They're looking at that child for any injuries that may have occurred prior to this death.
Until we more or less run out a lot of the information that we are having to track down, right now these charges will stand, and we'll continue to look at this case in all aspects of it.
You are watching HLN Now, so glad you are. I'm Susan Hendricks in today for Mike Galanos, and we start with what you are talking about. The young boy who died last week in the back of a car in Georgia. Truly heartbreaking. Today, police are talking about Justin Ross Harris, the father charged with murder and child cruelty. But people who know Justin Harris say he would never intentionally hurt his son. The 33-year-old is blaming himself for his son's death. But authorities think there is much more to this story. Harris has pleaded not guilty to the charges, and his arrest has caused two very different opinions. Many say Justin Harris made an honest, tragic mistake that day. Others agree with police that something more is going on. But people are supporting him financially, donating nearly $20,000 so far on a fundraising site. The money, according to the organizer who set up that fund, is supposed to help with the family's expenses. Police say they've been in contact with the boy's mother, but are not saying anything more about that. Leanna Harris told CNN on Friday, the mom, that she has been advised not to speak to the media. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Philip Holloway to talk about this case. Philip, good to see you. Let's go back to the charges. When you first hear about the severity of the charges, what does that tell you automatically? Because they announced the charges fairly quickly.
They announced them immediately. He was arrested on the scene, and sometime several hours later, they secured an arrest warrant for felony murder. What's got the community, I think, so divided over this is the idea that you're gonna make an arrest with such a serious charge and then investigate after. What we're hearing now, after the police have made some follow-up statements, is that they think this is a different scenario than what it appeared to be at first. And the investigation appears to be headed in a more serious way.
And a former Georgia prosecutor says the felony murder charge is really automatic, whether it involves malice or not, kind of saying, okay, this is the reason for the charges so quickly. When the autopsy occurs, that's when we'll find out a lot more information.
The autopsy is going to be critical because that's what's going to tell us the nature of the death, what caused the death, and whether or not the father told the truth about what happened at the time it happened. The autopsy has to be done scientifically, it has to be done objectively, and it has to be done properly so that we can really get to the truth of the matter.
And I know people are judging. They say, okay, the little boy, there's a cute picture of him, 22 months old. Could this happen? Would he necessarily fall asleep, and could the father forget? We have seen this happen before. The children, I believe, were a little bit younger. I think this is telling, Philip. One police officer says, I've been in law enforcement for 34 years. What I know about this case, he says, shocks my conscience as a police officer, a father, and a grandfather. So arriving at that scene, nothing less than horrific to see this adorable young boy who had passed away in the car. The father arrives and says, what have I done? What have I done? My initial reaction is to feel for the father on the scene there. But they made some observances, and apparently some of his statements were not consistent.
That's what the police are saying, and that comment from their public affairs officer that it shocks his conscience, that's what tells me that this is going in a very different direction. I think they believe that something much more horrific happened than what was originally reported. And I think that if that's the case, this becomes a malice murder investigation, and everything's on the table, including the death penalty, potentially.
Is it rare that a police officer who's been on the force that long, he's a grandfather, to speak out this way? He's not necessarily saying this father is guilty, but he's saying something in that message. That, to me, is telling.
I've never seen a public affairs officer make a bold statement like that. They usually play these things very close to the vest, and they don't release a lot of information. But dropping hints like this, I think, suggests that the investigation is going in a very different direction.
Are you surprised that the wife, the mother of this young boy, isn't saying anything? Do you believe that, of course, attorneys are doing some investigating, and she was told not to say much while this investigation is ongoing.
Well, I don't know. I know that she's been in contact with law enforcement. They have confirmed that. The police department has said they have been in touch with the mother and been in communication with her throughout this investigation.
All angles,
and they have not decided, according to their last remarks, whether or not she had any involvement in this, and that's something that they're looking at as well.
I think what you said is key. Once we get the autopsy
Right.
report, it's going to be so telling in terms of how he died, if this was staged, or if it was an accident, like the father is saying the whole time.
That autopsy is going to tell us a lot about what happened, when it happened, and under what circumstances it happened, and whether or not the dad was telling the truth at the scene.
All right, we are, Philip, thank you. We're switching gears. Did you watch the World Cup last night?
No, I missed it. I was at a concert.
I got to tell you about it. You're going to see clips. The World Cup.